Longplay 4K Review, Call of Duty. The feeling of deja vu occurs, the Wachowski brothers teach us, when you stumble twice on the stairs against the same black cat. Infinity Ward Studios' brainchild expands this definition. Deja vu is when you find yourself again surrounded by painfully familiar landscapes, again see the characteristic torn animation, half-caricatured faces of soldiers and perform memorized combat missions. Call of Duty to clone Medal of Honor. The entire Medal of Honor Allied Assault Authors team participated in the development of the game, Call of Duty commercials proudly announce. The PR people don't lie. Infinity Ward consists almost entirely of former employees of the studio. 2015, a year and a half ago released Mohei. At some point, the company split in two, one half went under the wing of Activision, the other half signed a contract with Vivendi Universal Games to publish the shooter Men of Valor, Vietnam, which will be the subject of our editorial in 2004. We did not make this excursion into history for nothing. Looking at the noisy success of Mohei, it was not hard to guess that a whole clutch of imitators would soon follow in the hot footsteps of the military blockbuster. But we could not imagine that we would face an absolute, 100% clone. Call of Duty could easily pass for a simple add-on, because it doesn't contain a single fresh idea and lives only at the expense of ready-made developments. Our timid hopes that Infinity Ward would try to further develop the concept or at least eliminate the flaws were in vain. Dream Factory vs Scripted Grots, Taken 30. Here we go. When you live on celluloid. The heroine of this review, as well as the entire Medal of Honor series, would not have come into existence at all if mainstream cinema had not turned to the theme of World War II. Saving Private Ryan, Enemy at the Gates, miniseries Band of Brothers, Call of Duty draws ideas not with a plastic bucket, but with a backhoe bucket. The 24 linear missions are neatly cut into 3 consecutive campaigns, American, British and Soviet. All major Allied operations in the events of half a century ago are known by count, so the content of the first 2 episodes is not difficult to predict. The U.S. Army marches in the direction laid out by the aforementioned brothers, from the landing in the German stronghold off the coast of Normandy to the final attack in the Ardennes forest. The British got the mopping up of a prisoner of war camp, a brisk promenade on the decks of the battleship Tirpitz 1, sabotage of a German hydroelectric plant and destruction of the Fa 2. Blow up in artillery installations, capture Y documents, shoot Z armored vehicles. Arcade tank rides, another variation on the theme of Paratrooper. The inevitable truck chase scene and delightfully voluminous explosions are attached. Over the biggest rake, the screenwriters somehow got over the biggest rake. Unlike Mohei, Breakthrough, which was criticized by us, COD doesn't try to raise a Superman who performs so many feats alone that they would be enough for the whole 101st Airborne Division. Almost in every mission there are squad mates around us, who help us in shooting Hitlerites and completing missions, though there is plenty of patriotic gloss. The last third of the game brings a surprise, the battle for Stalingrad 2. The crossing of the Volga River and the subsequent mass attack on the Nazi positions defending the nearby high-rise buildings deserves a round of applause for the excellent staging. Deafening machine gun fire merges with the shouts of dozens of soldiers running up the slope to the half-destroyed hulks of houses. New reinforcements arrive on the river. German Ju-87s roar from column to column, spitting out deadly bursts one after another. Pathos orchestrations by Michael Giacchino keep the battle mood alive. The scale of the events is breathtaking, and yet we are only a virtual remake of a scene from the pseudo-historical melodrama Enemy at the Gates, demonstrating the talent of the artists and the masterful work of the people responsible for setting up the triggers. Movie magic, no other way. Enemy in the back alley. People who, unlike Infinity Ward's designers, are no stranger to the history of the 20th century, are strongly advised to leave their bats at the doorstep and take poison for medicinal purposes. COD has such cranberries that it's useless to discuss them. We will not ridicule the shameful bloopers, gross errors and just plain stupidity, made by the developers during the blind copying of Jean-Jacques Annaud's tape and other Hollywood creations. We will not mock the hilariously caricatured NKVD officers, who are all like a selection meters with a cap. The developers have obvious problems with the image of proportions, and to censor the Russian accent of the actors. Much worse is another thing, the battle luxury does not provide for our active participation. Barely recovered from a short-term contusion a la Rainbow Six 3, lots of blur, muffled sound, slow motion, Spielberg can be proud, the unarmed protagonist starts rushing from one barricade to another in the hope of finding, to quote the mission text, a more knowledgeable officer. Meanwhile, the scripted masses rush into the attack, shells burst, and we just watch. In fact, all our interaction with the level was reduced to a banal walk from point A to point B. Screenplay. Alas, this formula perfectly fits most of the missions. The hero admires nature and methodically slays enemies, not forgetting to look at the super compass, which accurately indicates the location of the next target. The world around him is dead from birth. Trees don't sway in the wind, barrels aren't shot through, and crates only explode into splinters on special occasions. Lamps and lamps lit by someone burn brightly in long abandoned houses. The illusion of being in an open space is nothing more than a trick of the senses. Minor signs clearly limit your freedom of movement. A step to the right, a step to the left, a metallic click, boom, zinc coffin. More or less believable background, devoid of small details, that's what Call of Duty universe is. Sometimes it comes to absurdity. When trying to enter a locked cottage on one of the first levels, we are met by huge white letters, "You should not try to open the doors. All the right doors will be unlocked. Our path is rails, and we are a wagon." Like in Medal of Honor, here almost from the very beginning it seems as if someone's hand puts the action on pause and patiently waits for the protagonist to deign to climb through a window or tie his shoelaces. You get up from the trench, and the fire of all machine guns in the neighborhood immediately switches to your modest person. How nice it is to be the center of attention. Enemy reinforcements materialize in tightly closed rooms, and shootouts in cities resemble a school shooting gallery, when in place of one cardboard deck immediately appears another. Suppostats know how to change their position correctly, but they are stupid enough not to forget to stick some limb out of the shelter. The process of spawning the creeps is greatly facilitated by the look through the crosshairs function, borrowed from Operation Flashpoint. Only twice the authors deviate from the rules they invented and add defensive missions to the menu. It doesn't matter what we are defending, a strategically important bridge or the infamous Pavlov's house, the goal is the same, to kill as many repopulating enemies as possible and to hold on for the specified number of minutes. From the outside it looks fun. While the player is running around like a squirrel in a wheel, trying to tear himself apart between shooting tanks coming from all sides and a horde of frenzied croats pounding him fiercely with butts on the back of his head, his partners, driven by the stunned eye, die ignominiously. There is no paramedic at hand, nobody knows how to use first aid kits except us, and the guys should be given a fat steak for throwing grenades. Rifle for 3. Design shortcomings are partially compensated by spectacular and good technical execution. Having moved to Activision, Infinity Ward employees got access to the heavily modified Quake 3 engine, which has already proved itself in Return to Castle Wolfenstein 3. The result, even on rough terrain, by the banks of rivers, where the pretty shader water splashes, and in places where there is a large concentration of equipment, the action never turns into a slideshow. Your correspondent experienced something similar during the storming of Red Square Inch's Stalingrad, but fortunately, the torture was short. If COD had only single player, the final score would hardly rise above 70%, linear dolly sheep with nothing but 5-6 hours of gameplay and the notorious movie NES, which has become tiresome in recent months. We should thank multiplayer mode for the high score. Interesting maps, traditionally high-quality support for custom mods, balanced weapons cause exceptionally pleasant emotions. Only suspiciously Kvakovskago jumping fighters. Yes, the lack of menu choice skins, but this, as well as the reduced bloodiness, will cure if not patches, then very skillful hands fans, for sure. Corn Pop. That's how they live under one roof, bright, disposable Steadicam camera simulator for lovers of uncomplicated entertainment and skillfully made multi, not reaching, however, to the high standards of Battlefield 1942. Even if you like one thing, you'll have to pay for the whole set. And don't forget to buy popcorn.